What's up, everybody? It's day 65 of 100 Days of Code. It's your boy Kendall once again here on a beautiful Tuesday evening after the School of Code course. We're in week 10 of the School of Code course. And don't say that three times fast. Tongue twister. So, School of Code, of course, is the boot camp that I'm doing to learn about coding. So, I'm now a full stack developer, 10 weeks into the course. We've just come off a week of doing a project where we did it as a team and worked in an agile way. And this week has sort of been doing things to sort of enhance that project and make it better. So, working with the same team in an agile way. But now what we're doing is doing some other things. So it's also day 65 of 100 days of code. So what did we get up to today? Well, first, before I do that, with 100 days of code, we have a few things that we always do every day. With that, rule number one is we make sure we code 1 hour a day. Two, we make ourselves accountable publicly to LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube. Three, I share my thoughts and my feelings about how things are going today. So today, what we got up to is we revisited our code base again. So revisited our project that we did last week with our team. And at the beginning of the day, at the boot camp, we followed a similar format where we started off with squats. And then after that, we got into our groups. And for about an hour, we did some code wars. So me and my group, we did, I think, a 6 KYU together. And we solved it, we problem solved, we planned it out, that sort of thing. And we did a code wars, which had several different functions and several different problems in it. So we did end up in the end figuring that out and solving that, which is really good. So we did some code wars, which was nice. Keep those JavaScript muscles nice and muscular and nice and exercised. And then from there, the next part of the morning was then we were learning about documentation. And about the importance of documentation and why we do it and why it's important. So first and foremost, we watched some videos about documentation. So we watched this, one of the videos was talking about, what you do in documentation. So first off, what is documentation? Well, documentation sort of gives a picture to both the user and a developer of somebody who might approach your project and how they can use it, right? How they can get stuck into it, how they can figure out how to use it, how they can install it, things like that. So sort of you might be like, okay, cool. So like in this documentation, you might say, well, what does the user need to know? We learned about things like, with our codes, how could we make it simpler? So there were several different things we were doing today. We were learning about documentation and we were learning how to make our code base simpler so it was easier to read and easier to understand. We had to sort of think about our higher level of structure and sort of what was going on. Sort of what will we document? So what are we going to talk about in our documents? We looked at sort of some of the structure of what's document. So inside documentation, which by documentation, what I mean is like a README. So in every sort of GitHub or sort of project, there's going to be a README inside of it, a README.md, which stands for the Markdown. And it's essentially talking about what the project is, what it does, how you can make it easier to get it running for whoever is using your project. It might talk about things like the purpose of different parts that are within your project. It's a way of sort of lowering the cognitive loads of whoever's approaching it. So it might be for maybe somebody using it for the first time. It might be for a developer approaching that code base for the first time. Or it might even be for you in the future so that when you come back to it, you even know what's going on. And so things that you can do is sort of making the code simpler, making the functions more semantic so that, they make sense what's going on. There don't need to be loads of comments unless they're very much needed, but that the functions and the language and the semantics of the code, they actually make sense. And there's a flow about it and it's simple and it does what it needs to do, and somebody could read it at a bird's eye view and they could know what's going on. In the documentation as well, in this README, it's like, what do people need to know? So we need documentation, depending on who's looking at it. Maybe it invites, if you have documentation and you're looking for somebody to employ you, it invites employers to have an easier way of accessing. They don't have all day to look through all the code and look through every single file. They don't know what's going on. But if you make it simpler for them to look at things and get them started and get it initiated, it's going to be a lot easier to access. We want to make people feel welcome into our projects. So things like that. So for example, for the project, there may be in the documents, there may be a structure in place where you have a table of contents at the top. There may be the logo of your thing. There may be a description about sort of what your project does. So for ours is a resource one. So it's like, hey, this is a resource thing where you can search for articles, you can add your own articles, and you can also add to favorites, and you can delete them if you want to. So making it simple so people can understand it's accessible and they know exactly what's going on. For ours, it was also talking about sort of how you install these things. So for example, with the front end and back ends, it was talking about like, here's how you install this. Here's how you clone it down. But first off, you need to change into the folder that you want it to be installed into. And the next step is then you need to then clone that down. And here's the exact link of how you clone that down. Here's the repository. The next thing, you need to npmi. And this is how you start it. And so really making it simple where it lowers the cognitive loads, where people can just come into this file, they can go to the table of contents, they can find exactly what they need from the starts. They can click on the link and it takes them straight to where they need to go. And so there's that sort of thing. There was things like environmental variables in our documentation as well. There were things like, this is how the API works. So how do you access the API and what's going on with the API? Things like that. We also looked at refactoring the front end of the codes and making that simpler and more semantic. So we did all those things today. So all in all, it's been a really good day. Enjoyed some of the videos. I thought they were really enjoyable. So for example, one of the videos it spoke about just how to make documenting better. So in the documentation, this lady who we listened to, she said, start with what the reader needs, write less, write the outline first of what you want in the documents. Rubber ducking works for docs too. So sort of talking things out loud and putting it in plain English and explaining it. Write readably. And, give it like a little bit of structure or a little bit of way of going about it. And it's not just about documentation. So we looked at those sort of things. We looked at lots of examples of it as well. So all in all, it's been a really good day. I feel like we've learned a lot. It was hard going at times because we've never done documentation and we've never used this sort of format before. But it was a new learning and had a lot of fun doing it. And, I think we're doing a little bit more tomorrow. So we'll keep trucking on. I think we made good progress. We managed to use one of the sort of templates that they gave to us, and we made some alterations and sort of made our own sort of outline of what that's going to look like. So tomorrow we're going to be looking at the back end a little bit more, getting a little bit more into that and refactoring a few things. But overall, really good day. So whatever the case, guys, day 65 of 100 Days of Code, and we'll see you tomorrow.